We are now in 96, last summer.
This is the formation from which nobody disappeared, right?
The nobody disappeared formation.
Nobody disappeared formation.
This landed in Tim and Polly Carson's farm. And
on the same field as that I told you to remember, which was the 1990 pictogram with the claw.
And the straight line, the first straight line. And they've received them just about every year except one. And they're a very special couple. They know these are gifts. And for a long time they've been laughed at by the town. But people are coming around and now they're asking them questions. Polly, what should I do? I have a crop circle. All these people are showing up, thousands. They want to come in.
Now this was a shot along the circle, again a pole shot, showing that's called Woodborough Hill, which is an ancient and mystical hill at one end of this large field. And there's just a couple of interesting shots. This shows the formation battered to pieces at the end of the season, about to be harvested. And there are the trees of Woodborough Hill.
And yeah, Polly just loved this. This was a family camping, having a little picnic. The boy was kind of upset that I went in to take a picture of them. But I thought, and here's the formation again. See how you can see it, kind of?
It's still there as a
shadow.
kind of stubble pattern.
And then what will happen after this is after they take the big other kinds of crop circles away, they roll over the soil, and that's when it really disappears. Now this was in a special field. We call it Merlin's field. There's a crescent, a sun with
tendrils,
but there's 11 drills. So Michael says there are 11 drills. And the spiral again. And for the first time it had the scalloped edges as you walked around it. It was lovely. It was small and easy to get around, easy to kind of learn.
Now this was not visited by anybody. We suddenly had an aerial photograph, but nobody got into that. This was in Bali, and the thing about Bali is it does not hold a crop circle very well. It tends very quickly to grow back to the light. But what is awfully interesting about this is that clearly it is a five-fold geometry. And it's that very rare thing, a geometry with an explicit five-fold nature. Now, this is a series that I'm hoping to do some work on this winter. They seem to be developing a game of overlay and underlay of things being partially exposed. So it's as though the imagery is partially covered and partially exposed, and there are several of these which seem to be either by the same design team or part of a specific design task, if you like. But there's another one which is doing the same thing. I mean, this is a 6-petaled flower with 3 petals superimposed on it, partly covering it, and then these 3 very odd, I keep calling them bananas, but I guess
crescents.
They're crescents.
Thank you. Bananas, please.
Well. And this, again, is clearly the same team. This had the single best floor lay I've ever come across. And everybody walked in and was just completely wiped out by this. This was an astonishment, and this was also a circle where we saw the farmer completely turned around. We saw a transformation here.
This landed one morning when most of the people were on their way to see another circle, and they never got to it.
We were going to see, hang on, let me just show you. We were on our way to that, which we never got to visit, because this thing was on the way.
And of course it stopped everyone from visiting that other circle which had just been reported, because how could you go past this? And it was up on a hill, so you could see kind of what it looked like.
You know, so there was squealing brakes.
And then you went inside and it had the most spectacular floor lay, and how they're using the lines here to get you into the whole thing. Again, there's this opening here, so you can walk right up and in.
Into every bit.
And then you can get into this part, and see, you can get around here without going through. And so it kept its shape for weeks and weeks, because you didn't have to break down through any of the walls, and that's how they designed these. That's the inside. That's why you can't walk on this with shoes on. Everyone took their shoes off. How could you? That's an oil painting.
It looks like a flower, you know. How could you tread on that?
And this is, so the farmer drove up, he burned rubber stopping. He was so furious. He threw people out. And we stood there and watched a transformation of this man. Going from he's been vandalized to, well, maybe he'll put a table up and welcome people the next day. But one thing he said to us when he finally started to soften, and we said, please charge money, charge £1, we want to pay it, researchers will pay you. And people were putting in his hand as we were talking, they were giving him £1. And he's watching this, and then he said, well, is this the beginning of Independence Day? So you think, you know, we have a responsibility with, I think, our images that we put out there in terms of aliens and fear, and that's why Michael and I are very adamant about not automatically saying this is connected to UFOs, because of the fear issue and because of how it's been drummed into us. You know, they're so alien. This arrived on a hill called Windmill Hill.
People.
It was almost 1,000 feet across, 900 and something.
That gives you a sense of scale of it, and it also gives you an idea of, once again, how much people love to go in.
Oh, each one of these circles, as you walked through and say up one of these arms, was swirled in a different direction.
Now, this, again, we're back to that field that I told you to take a note of. I hope you're all doing that. This is the big Stonehenge formation, which was remarkable in that it appeared during the hours of daylight. A farmer flew over it, and they use Stonehenge as a kind of marker when they're flying in. There's an airfield quite nearby, and he flew over at about 4-ish. There are different stories, but it was 4-ish, and there was nothing in the field. And he flew back at 5-ish, and that was there. Now there are different stories saying
15 minutes, 20 minutes.
45 minutes. It doesn't matter.
It wasn't longer than an hour.
It wasn't there, and then it was there. Now, this seemed, again, with the benefit of hindsight, this seems to be the parting of a certain kind of curtain. This seems to be the kind of thing we'd never seen before, and was terribly important. Now, there it is in some detail, and you can see, here's the other thing, that a spinal line was laid first, and that created these breaks so that people could walk the route without ever breaking the walls down. Now, this was the most visited crop formation ever, with something like 15,000 people who went through it. And by the time they'd gone through it, those had become, from 8 inches wide, they'd become 6 feet wide, tragically. But in principle, it was designed to accept people. And that's an inside shot. Now, just quickly going back to some geometry, I've been working on this for a long time. What stimulated me to take a greater interest in this was the widespread suggestions that this was man-made. Can you believe? 151 circles. Somebody claimed they made it in 2 3/4 hours. That is 60 odd seconds per circle, with no allowance for setting out the pattern. And do you know, people believed that? Anyway, it seemed to me that there was something very important about that corner. And Patricia had taken that photograph at that corner, and we thought, oh, that's a great photo.
This is the place where you drove up, you took a right here, you parked, and you met the farmer and paid your pound and went in.
And then, looking back on it later, it occurred to me that this, knowing about the way they positioned them in fields very significantly, I thought I should have a look at that corner, the corner of entrance and the corner where the sign went up and the corner where Patricia's photo is on the back of a calendar. It seemed to be telling me something. So this is a very accurate electronic survey, and I took a line from that corner through the centre of the main circle, and it went right through the centre of circle 22. Now, I've not got the time to go into real detail, but I've been doing a lot of work on the numbers 7 and 11, which are labyrinthine numbers, and obviously 22 is part of that set, so I got very excited, and I thought, what else can we find about that corner? And if you take the 2 external points, they're marked in red, one is there and one is there. If you encompass that in a kind of fan, do you see what you get? It's encompassed precisely like that. What is that angle? It is not 35 9/8. It is not 36 1/32. It is bingo, spot on 36. I just thought I should share that with you.
Oliver's Castle. This is the formation that the student took a video being formed of.
Well, which we're going to see in a moment.
We'll just lay out some of the background quickly. There's this hill that is lovely to walk on called Oliver's Castle. There's no castle
I
there
showed you a
anymore.
shot of it, right? With those crescents, a big steep hill with trees on it.
There's no castle. It's you walk dogs or fly kites, or it's just a lovely place, obviously, to sit even when there's not a crop circle and look out over this valley. So it's a perfect place if you're going to design a film and direct it, and you want to show your crop circle expertise. You would have a student sitting here taking it. Except there's one problem, and his name is John Butler.
And that's a real problem.
Because he'll kill you if you try to hoax a circle on his land. We didn't know about this film. We heard there was a report of a circle on this hill, which we had been to about 6 or 7 times anyway, taking friends there and walking. And we went to Butler immediately and asked him if we could go in to measure it. And he said, I'm tired of you guys. I'm tired of anyone having to do with crop circles. Leave me alone. It's all vandalism. I've called the police. Don't come near me. Don't go in the field. So we tried 5 or 6 other times to call him. No answer, no response.
We tried to sneak in as well, but
There was
we were
a
chased
cop,
out.
well, there was a police helicopter over the field. It was just weird timing. Maybe we're not going to be paranoid. Maybe the policeman probably had his eye on it and just happened to be kind of covering it. And we drove up with kids and a friend ready to jump out and measure, and he chased us off, the helicopter. So, what happened?
Well, we went up every day, we looked at it. I was convinced that clearly that is a 6-fold geometry. Something told me that there was something magic there. I had to survey it. We went up and offered him money, and he thought it was so hysterical that anybody could be so stupid.
He thought gullible American, because I asked him and paid him £5 to get in to measure.
So we went and we measured it. And there's the formation inside. There's one of the arms. Here's another arm. We're looking up at the hill. You can see just how...
Now, this landed on the wettest weekend of the whole summer. So if this looks a bit messy, this lay, it's because of that. It's because a lot of researchers snuck into it when it was wet. And if that happens, you end up leaving mud and the circle gets really messed up quickly. This guy got in earlier, Stuart, to take the shot. That's why you see the fine lay. It was beautiful inside, parts of it.
Look, a fantastic swirl. That's a measuring tape. We have been working. Now here is the greatest sensation of all. I've been working since the summer to prove that within 6-fold geometry, the mineral kingdom was 5-fold geometry, the animal kingdom, and literally 2 weeks ago I found that within this formation is a precise 7-fold geometry. Now let me just explain it. If you set up a 7-pointed star with the arm crossing precisely on the perimeter of the centre circle, all the way around, its points encompass the primary satellites. That has never been seen before. And that symbolically indicates the world of spirit, the world of revelation, and the world of the female.
Well, it's the eternal feminine, and it's what lies behind the veil.
Now, this is the first circle we saw forming. So this seems to me to be particularly appropriate as a geometrical correlation. Okay.
And this is absolutely new. I mean, Michael just figured out the 7-fold actually right before this lecture a couple of days ago. And he called John Michel.
Yeah, in London, who's a famous geometer. And just for confirmation.
Asked what 7-fold means, and that's what he told us.
Spirit, revelation, and the female principle. Well, I'm very happy about those 3 things. So what we're going to do now is just set up the video to show this forming.
John made an announcement the night before he shot this that he was going on a crop watch, and at Oliver's Castle, did anyone want to join him? And he said this at the pub. And he was woken up by the crop circle sound, which is electronic crickets. No one joined him. He was in a tent because it was rainy. And he looked outside and he saw lights over a field. And he had his video. and he grabbed his video, and after a while it started to work.
So he was very open, you know. He'd invited somebody. Obviously, he didn't know what he was going to get. He'd been along, said, anyone want to come with me? And they said no, which isn't surprising because it was so rainy. And he then caught this astonishing footage, and this was about 5 o'clock on a Sunday morning of the wettest weekend last summer, and by midday he was telegraphing it for, I think he went home, changed his clothes, then started phoning the barge. This is a freeze frame. 2 luminosities appear. Watch the centre of the field. Right? It takes 3 seconds to fall. It's 300 feet in size. Now it's going to happen again. 2 more come in from the back, but they just seem to be surveyors. They're just checking on the work. So there are 2 sets of 2. Now hang on. There's the freeze frame on the empty field. He pulls back. Now watch the centre here. So there are 2 pairs of 2 luminosities, right? A and B seem to trigger the formation, and C and D seem to come on immediately afterwards and just circle it, with no apparent result.
Can we see it again?
Do you want to see it again? Miguel?
Yes.
The avenues or the arms were exactly 4 feet in that formation, except after the second satellite, and they dropped down to exactly 3 feet.
But to an inch. A regularity that is not often seen in crop circles. They were so precise.
But you think they have their own light? It's a kind of...
Yeah, oh yeah, it's their own line. Now, the A and B come in from there, loop round. As they loop round, centre circle first, then the 6 satellites, and then the avenues.
Now, this tape on its own plays again. It'll... This is just after dawn on a kind of a cloudy day.
Right.
It seems to spread from the center out.
And this footage has been put so far through 4 separate technical and special effect
Actually,
houses.
4 in America and 1 in England, top of the line special effects. And they all say it's genuine.